I'm going to tell you, it is good to be here. It's good to be here today with my friends and colleagues, people I admire, people who inspire me, people who aren't afraid to push back when it's necessary, people who are thoughtful in the way they approach and debate the tough issues, and people who are thoughtful as they're reaching for the right decisions. And that's a good thing, because there is no shortage of tough decisions ahead of us. And we got a lot of issues to discuss this weekend. It's because I have faith in you and who you are that I'm excited and encouraged about moving into this council. This morning, I want to talk about the realities of what's happening to us in our country, in our state, in our profession. I want to talk about the real truth that we are all living in. And I want to talk about tax fairness and what that means and how that connects to our reality. How about the Occupy movement? And what about, I like that, the Occupy movement. I like the fact that you understand we're in it. And we've also got a paycheck deception initiative that's on the horizon, and we absolutely have to talk about that again, because November 2012 is going to be here before we even know it. And I've also got to talk about how our union, that's you and me, us, we've got to talk about how our union is central, absolutely central to improving the world we live in. How we can lead and how we can find a better way to the future for our students, for their families, and for our families. That's what we've got to engage in here this weekend. Let's start with what everybody in the country has been talking about lately, and you know that, I just mentioned it, and that's the Occupy Wall Street movement. What began just a little over a month ago in the financial district of New York City is now spread to over 100 cities nationwide. And I'll tell you this, I doubt very seriously that the folks that sat in somebody's living room talking about how discouraged they were about what's going on in this country, I doubt very seriously that when one of them said, you know what, I'm going down there with my sleeping bag and I'm going to sit there till somebody pays attention, and two or three other folks said, well, I'm in it, I'm in the car. They sure as heck didn't realize then that what they started with their own initiative and their own will was going to spread like wildfire across this country. And little did they know that what they were talking about was what's living in each and every one of us. This is a grassroots movement that is fighting back against the corrosive power that the major banks and the super wealthy are wielding in this country. It's tearing at the fabric of our democracy. Somebody's got to stand up with them. And if it's not us, who's it going to be? Did you know that the richest 1% of Americans hold a third of the nation's wealth? There's something wrong with that picture. Did you know that corporate income between 2001 and 2008 grew, it's hard for me to get this word out, 400%, while the income of regular folks grew right about 28%. There's something wrong with that picture. And with this wealth, individuals and corporations have been buying their way into lower tax brackets. They've been buying their way into government contracts. They've been buying their way into astounding political influence. Now, just take a look at what's happening in public education. Arguably, two of the most influential public people talking about reforming public education these days are Eli Broad and Bill Gates. Their push to privatize schools, narrow the definition of student success, and tout these unproven educational reforms as gospel, it undermines our role as educators, and it attacks our right as the union of educators to actually assert our will and talk about what's right. You know, every time I read or say reform, what I think about is how many times since I've been president of CTA, people have said to me, why are you so opposed to reform? I say, look, I'm not opposed to reform, I'm opposed to stupid reform. And I'll tell you what, the reason I get to say things like that is because you believe it too. The fact of the matter is the problems facing our schools and our country are complex problems. And they demand complex solutions. And we have to acknowledge this. And we have to understand the issues in order to make the wise decisions and in order to initiate and sustain those intelligent conversations. We owe it to our children. We owe it to ourselves. And we owe it to our fellow Americans and our fellow Californians to get it right. That's why CTA is speaking out on education reform that works. It's why CTA has been talking about tax fairness. It's why we're encouraging our members to carry out this message, to occupy events popping up all over California. We can't just sit and watch this grassroots movement unfold right in front of us without declaring a very simple, real truth. We understand what you're feeling. We share your frustrations. We're going to stand with you. We see the inequities, and we want better for our country too. And when we stand with folks, they get that. Some people say, and I've had the phone calls already, this has nothing to do with education. I disagree, and I believe you disagree as well. Thank you for shouting it out. Public education is central to rebuilding our country and to shrinking this growing chasm between the haves and the have-nots. The haves and the have-nots. And these inequalities are counter to everything we believe. We see these current disparities every day in our classrooms and in our community. We fight for every child. We fight for every child, not just some of them. We believe in opportunity for all, not just a few. That's the cornerstone of public education, and it's part of the mission of the California Teachers Association, and we're going to be right in it. We are going to be right in it. We elected a governor and a superintendent of public instruction. They're standing with us on a lot of the issues. So we're better than a lot of the other states. But let's face it, folks, California's in a world of hurt. You know that. California right now ranks 46th in the nation in K-12 student spending. That's $3,000 under the national average. 10 years ago, that gap was only $700. Something's happening here. We ranked last in the number of teachers and librarians per student. We're 49th in the number of counselors per student. And in the last 4 years, we've lost $20 billion from our schools and colleges. And you people out there pre-K-12, you think you're hurting. Imagine what these community college folks are feeling. What about the people trying to keep a CSU open? What do you think they're feeling? During the same time, we've laid off 40,000 educators, and those college tuitions are skyrocketing. They've doubled. Do you remember when every middle-class working family used to believe that their kids could have the opportunity to go to college? Those days shouldn't be over, and we've got to do something about it. This is not the public education system that we want for our state, and it's certainly not what our students deserve. It's not the kind of public education system that's going to build a strong economic future for California either. The unprecedented cuts to our schools and colleges, they're impacting our union as well. Our membership count right now is nearly 30,000 less than it was 4 years ago. That impacts the CTA budget. It impacts how we do business. I know the Budget Committee is going to be tackling these issues. They got a hard job in front of them, and they need us. They need us to tell them the truth, to participate in that process, because come June, we're going to put in front of you a budget, and it's got to reflect not only what's real, but what's living out there with you all. These realities require us to be strategic and disciplined about the way we make our decisions. Now, we already know that we're going to be facing an expensive initiative battle in 2012, November 2012. That's a date on everybody's mind. Supporters of yet another paycheck deception initiative already turned in 900,000 signatures, and I don't have to wait for all of those to be counted. I'm telling you, it's going to qualify. We're going to have a paycheck deception initiative on the ballot November 2012. Period. Take that to the bank. Well, I'm going to tell you what, we've beaten it twice before, and we're going to beat it again. But it's a little bit different this time because they're getting crafty. They're starting to pay a lot of attention to the way they frame these things. The scam, it claims to ban political contributions from unions and corporations. For crying out loud, is there any corporation in the whole doggone world that uses payroll deduction to get money? No. But a voter doesn't know that, and the folks that we talk to at church don't know that. People we sit next to in a soccer game don't know that. This is a huge, huge challenge because you know you've got members in your chapter and they're going to say something like this. Okay, wait a minute. Let me get this. There's going to be an initiative where the union can't take my money and use it on politics unless they ask me? Sign me up. Now, you know that's living out in those buildings. And it's born out of this idea that folks just get so doggone upset about candidates. This is not a partisan issue. It's not about Republicans and Democrats. This is about initiatives. It's about legislation. It's about lobbying. It's about education policy. So when the attacks come on our pensions, when some lawmaker decides it's a great idea to just eliminate collective bargaining, how about folks that believe we should change the way colleges are accredited based on the way their students perform on tests? When these things all of a sudden see the light of day and they're sitting in front of voters, who's going to fight that back? You bet we are, but not if we can't afford to. And that's the conversation we have got to have with our members. We got to talk to them face to face, person to person. We got to help them understand what's really at stake. California is the last union stronghold in this country. California is still where unions are strong. And there are people out there who hate us because of who we are. And I'm proud to stand in front of people and say, I'm a union member. These folks want to privatize our schools. They want to turn public education into money-making business opportunities. And there is one group of folks standing between them and just getting a little bit richer. And you know who they are. It's us. It's us. Corporations already outspend us 15 to 1. 15 to 1. So how about 25 to 1? How about 30 to 1? 99 to 1? Defeating this initiative is not going to be easy or cheap. We're in different times now, and it's going to take all of us. We have got to learn how to talk to our members. We have got to be in front of them in a very proactive and kind and gentle way, helping them understand what we're up against, because we're up against a big, big challenge. You know, as a reminder, just let me, the last time they came after us, this was November of 2005. You all remember this. Prop 175 was the same gig. Prop 175, the coalition spent $70 million to beat that thing back. CTA put in $35 million of that. We're not in a position to do that again. I love listening to Eric say we got to change, that we are changing, because I'll tell you something. If we're going to win this time, what we've got to be able to do is we got to be able to mobilize our members on the ground and help them talking to their neighbors and their friends and family. And we can do that. Look, there is an excellent article, some of you saw it in the California Educator just recently, about this whole thing. Use it. Engage your members with it. We've got to start those conversations. And it doesn't matter where we start. It can be in our lunchrooms, it can be in our building rep meetings. But we've got to empower our members now, because eventually we've got to engage our communities and the public. We've got to find a way to come together as one. Not just all of the education community, but the communities as a whole. Look, I've spent a long time so far this morning outlining the sad state of realities that surround us. But I know as well as you, they don't define us. You don't get to be as old as California Teachers Association. You don't get to be as old and powerful as we are without being pretty united and without learning how to organize around these kind of difficulties. We know how to do this, and we know that together we're stronger. In the words of legendary author and activist Alice Walker, I love this quote. Let me just quote this. The most common way people give up their power is thinking they don't have any, unquote. Think about it. The most common way people give up their power is thinking they don't have any. Do you know why people are so afraid of us? We are in every single community in this state. You cannot walk into a church in California without a CTA member being in that congregation. You can't sit at a soccer game without sitting near a CTA member. Try to be in a Safeway somewhere without a CTA member there. Can you imagine the power of this organization if we can mobilize our members to start telling this real truth? We're going to join with other labor unions and community groups, and we're going to prove that we have power. We believe that truth, that together we're stronger because we are one. I love the way I hear that inside of myself. Sometimes in my most quiet moments, it's soft, and I can just barely hear it in my own voice. We are one. And sometimes it's just resounding, and that's especially when I'm starting to feel powerful. It's like when I'm starting to feel you all, and it just kind of screams from within me, we are one. That's where we're trying to get to. We saw this as our historic state of the emergency stuff last spring. We saw it in Wisconsin. It's unfolding right now in Ohio, and Pennsylvania's not far behind. Even in defeat, even on that downward spiral, trying to figure out how are we going to get out of this, union members and working class members, Americans, Californians joining together. It's like we make working class issues and union issues community issues. The us is much bigger than just who's sitting in this room. It's the same thing we're seeing right now with the Wall Street movement that we just talked about earlier. We got to harness this energy, engage with our members and the community, and organize for a better future. As part of this state of emergency that you all voted on, one of the things you said is we've got to take a serious look at long-term strategic planning in this organization. You said, we got to know where we're headed before we start talking about what we're going to do right now. Man, I'll listen to you. And so did your board of directors. And building on council's recommendation, we put together a work group of members and staff who have begun this important work. Some of you right here in this room are in that work group. And one of the first recommendations that group brought back to the board of directors is, we are going to hire an outside strategic planner, somebody who's not part of our gig, somebody who can take a very objective look at who we are, and somebody who's going to get input from all around the organization, going to get input from you all, going to get input from the people in the buildings, someone who's going to give us a real good look at who we are. I love this. You know, you've heard this expression, well, I don't want to hang my dirty laundry outside. Hey, sometimes you got to look at your warts. And we're going to learn how to do that. And we're going to be stronger for it. And I'll tell you something, it's not going to be a quick process, and it's not going to be easy. It's never easy when you're trying to tell the real truth to each other, and sometimes it's not all that fun. But I guarantee you one thing about this process. It's going to be thorough. It's going to be thoughtful. It's going to be inclusive. And I guarantee you it is going to be transparent. You are going to know what we're doing, and you're going to know what we're finding out. And I'll tell you, there's a real good chance that our organization is going to look a little bit differently when we're done, and going to behave a little bit differently when we're done. And what my hope is, what my belief is that when we're done with that, we are all going to feel a part of this organization and what we're about and where we're going. But these are the decisions we're going to make together as we continue to evaluate our effectiveness and our capacity and our relevance in how we move forward. Look, I know the change can be difficult. I guess as a counselor, it's one of the concepts I saw challenge my students and my colleagues. This whole idea of change. But change comes whether you like it or not. It's a natural occurrence. And we all know when you don't adapt, you don't survive. So we got some work to do. We're going to step outside of our own comfort zones during this process. And you know as well as I do, we know how to do that. I've already mentioned one initiative that's going to be on the November 2012 ballot, but what about a funding initiative? It's painfully clear that state budget is starving for funds, and it's not for lack of money. There's plenty of money in the state of California. California has the 8th largest economy in the world. Problems really come back to the tax structure. This unfair, inequitable tax structure that benefits the super wealthy at the expense of everybody else. Dang! Now look, I was trying to figure out how to put an exclamation point behind that sentence, but I had no idea. The super wealthy and big corporations are getting tax breaks that have them barely contributing to the system that helped them build their wealth. And you know, we've got to expose these inequalities, and we've got to be the ones that lead the way to tax fairness and stable funding. Oh, I know. You know, we got to take a time out. We got to take a time out for the earthquake, just for a second here. Every speaker always wonders, how am I going to get their attention? Look, we've got to be active participants in shaping our political economy. We've got to get out there and really make this part of who we are. And that's why we got to work in coalition with other labor unions and community groups. We got to come together with everybody. If we're going to have a funding initiative that we can all get behind in November, it can't just be us. Now, again, led by this council, and recommendations that came out of the Public Education Funding Work Group, by the way, a work group that you all formed, we know that there are certain criteria that any initiative must meet. And you also need to understand these are really political ideas. These are what we've really got to pay attention to if we want to get something passed. It's got to be based on tax fairness. And what that really means is it's got to have a progressive tax element. It has to have progressive taxation in it. Because that way, we know that everybody is at least getting close to paying their fair share. And the initiative must include not only funding for public education, and when I say public education, I mean pre-K through graduate school, but it's also got to provide for other essential public services. You all were very clear about making that statement. And if we're going to stop more hemorrhaging, if we're going to stop this downward spiral, we've got to generate at least $8 billion, because that's about the size of the structural deficit right now in California. Any less, and we're doing the state a disservice, because we make the voters feel that they have solved the problem when we know it's not even close. And we got to be smart about the way we do this. If we don't have a very broad coalition, if we don't have a broad base of support, we're in trouble. And we've got to put something on the ballot that we can win. So this has been a real thoughtful process that we've been engaged in. Somebody asked me, so what's the difference between being president and vice president? And I said, well, you know, I'm getting phone calls from people that I'm not used to talking to. You know, when I say everyone wants to have something we can do together, I do mean everyone, because just Thursday morning I was sitting down, I get a call from Governor Brown. My phone rings, it's the governor of California, and guess what he wants to talk about? He wants to talk about a tax initiative. He wants to talk about a funding initiative. And he wants to work with us to make it happen. So being a smart political activist trained by you all, I asked the right question. So, Governor, what are you thinking? And he started outlining his priorities. I'm telling you, they're very much like what we're talking about. What I just outlined to you were the kinds of things the governor was saying, although I had to push him pretty hard on progressive taxation. I mean, he knows it's going to take a broad coalition of labor, community, business, but the push on progressive taxation was really quite fun, because, I don't know, you guys, I just kind of liked teaching the governor something on the phone. You know? And he got it. You know, he understands something. He understands that we've got a short-term problem. And you know what that short-term problem is? Our folks are dying on the vine and they need relief now. So this solution has got to have a short-term fix, but it's also got to have a long-term fix. And it's also really, really important to understand, even with all of this, that voter behavior is going to be shaped by so many things that are outside of anyone's control. What's going to happen between now and next November is anybody's guess. Is the economy going to continue on this downward spiral? Unemployment going to increase? Are there going to be more jobs or less jobs? If we fail to meet the state budget projections and the triggers are pulled and we're losing more money, is that going to impact this whole thing? Are there going to be more attacks on our public pensions? What about redistricting and the presidential race? You know, all of these things are going to come together. How do we engage our members and the public at a time when they're practically dying under the weight of the trauma of the work that they signed up to do every single day? That's all got to be considered while we're moving forward with this funding initiative. Now, I'm confident that CTA, being thoughtful and strategic, can navigate through these waters, and I'm telling you, I'm confident because I'm confident in you. We can lead the way to a more equitable education funding and tax fairness. We can do that leadership. And as a result of that, we can improve education for our students. And we can build a brighter future for the state and for our nation. I believe that, but I don't believe that because I sit in my house thinking about all this stuff. I believe it because I know who you are. I know what you feel in your heart, and it's what I feel. We've got to continue to speak up for our students in our profession, and we've got to be the voice of reason in this education debate, especially as discussion heats up around the reauthorization of ESEA. I just got a knot in my stomach when I said reauthorization of ESEA, and I'm not the only one in this room that felt that. The waiver that just came out of the department, No Child Left Behind, let me tell you something. The CTA board just voted unanimously to oppose that waiver. What teachers want, what educators want, the people that you stand up for every day, what they're looking for is to have an authentic role to engage in improving our professional practice, not just trading one set of top-down mandates for another one. And somebody has got to be willing to tell the administration and the Federal Department of Education that you take one set of bad ideas and wrap them up with a different package and you put a different bow on it, it's still the same crap, and we're not going to stand for it. I kind of thought I was in the right spot on that one. And you're going to hear more about this because when we get into the board report, you're going to get an update from our ESEA work group, and they'll give you the specifics on where we're at with it. As we move forward in the new year, we are certainly going to face many challenges. And we're going to stand firm in our belief. And we're going to be resolute in our values. And I'll tell you what, we are not going to take our unity for granted. Because unity isn't something that you just get to and then it's there forever. Unity is something you work on every single day, every single interaction, every single opportunity that we have to talk to our members about what we believe and what we think needs to happen next. That's where unity comes from. We got to build on it, nurture it. And we do that by engaging our members. And we're going to reach out to the labor and education coalition partners as well as the communities that we live and work in. We're at an important crossroad, not only in the history of the California Teachers Association, but in the history of our country and our state. And here's the good news, people. Where we end up after we walk through all of this, California, we're going to have a public education system that we're going to hold. It's up to us. It's up to us. We are the ones that are going to make it happen. Are you ready for that? Yes. Are you ready? I am thrilled, absolutely thrilled to be standing in front of you right now. And I'm going to do everything in my power to help move us forward. Us. All of us. Thank you.